Well guys, Steve back here with another video. I know it's been a while since I've uploaded last, but of course, I'm sure as everybody knows, I'm pretty sure Pennsylvania, Michigan, and pretty much every state has certified their votes. Election's done. Kind of been holding out, waiting for all of this to happen, that way so I don't end up prematurely making a video saying Biden won, and then it gets taken to the court. It's done. Unless Trump were to unconstitutionally try to steal the election, it's over with. So just kind of wanted to take a deep dive and kind of just recap everything that went on through this election cycle. And I mean, if you know me, you just know I'm a very big Bernie supporter. Bernie's my guy. I love Bernie Sanders. Okay, but just it was a very disheartening election because one side of me says I'm glad Trump's out, because Trump, you see, the problem of it is with Trump, he claimed to be this anti-establishment Republican, and he really was not in the club. And I think this election proved that if you're not in the establishment's club, you're not going to win. But it just, again, it was a very disheartening election result because, again, I really didn't want Biden to win either. I didn't want either to win, not just because, Bernie lost and I wanted to prove the Democratic establishment wrong. No, because, I don't want Trump to win. It's just the fact that you're replacing Donald Trump with basically a nicer version of Donald Trump. And Joe Biden is arguably not nicer than Donald Trump. I mean, that's the thing that just mind boggles me. And the fact that the establishment just sat there and constantly railed about electability and how, people don't like the fact that Bernie is a socialist, which is just blatantly false. Bernie's not a socialist, okay? He's a social democrat. He's not even really a democratic socialist, okay? But, I mean, again, it's just very disheartening. Just all in all, because, again, Biden went out there and won. And the amazing thing is Biden didn't even really campaign until the final couple of weeks. And really, Biden should not have won. And of course, I will still always say that this election was a steal. And I will stand by that, okay, till the end of times, to my grave. The 2020 election was stolen from Bernie Sanders. Now, most would probably say, that's BS. 2016, you could make a case that was a legitimate steal because, again, the superdelegates and the rigging in the early primaries from the Clinton campaign, because they colluded with the DNC. You saw it in the emails. You had a legitimate case there. But this time, the establishment, you have the clip of Bernie saying the establishment's getting very nervous. They were extremely nervous because they knew Bernie could bring some change. Now, we're going to kind of delve into after Bernie dropped out of the race. But going into the race, I remember it was probably, I think, it was either early 2019 or late 2018 after midterms. Of course, I was just kind of dabbling into the realm of politics. I was mainly just a sports guy then. Well, at that point, I became a very political 13-year-old boy. And I had a lot of hope. I liked Bernie Sanders. My dad liked Bernie Sanders. That was a big reason. But then, you actually start to dive into it. And, what Bernie was saying made sense. In America, there's no reason why there are millions of people without health insurance. And I think, over 60,000 people die a year without basic health insurance. Yeah, we have enough money to go out and kill people in the Middle East, and all in the name of terror and trying to stop terrorism. And, again, just not to get too conspiratorial here, but, there's probably a good bit of voter suppression going through this election cycle. But, again, I don't know about all the evidence proven to it, but it's one of those things where we'll never know what happened if COVID, never hit. Bernie probably would have never won, because, I don't know who all here has watched the Bernie Blackout documentary that Vice News did, but it really hit the nail right on the head. Of course, Bernie, early on in the debates, it was amazing how they kept pushing people like Elizabeth Warren, who I liked. I liked Elizabeth Warren. I thought, listen, if Bernie does not win, I wouldn't mind Elizabeth Warren winning. For whatever reason, Bernie, for health reasons, cannot stay in the race. Allow the mantle to go to Elizabeth Warren. I liked Elizabeth. I also liked Tulsi Gabbard, but I just thought, she wasn't big enough. And, also, I don't know her stance on healthcare. I remember one of the debates they asked who here would support universal healthcare, I think, or Medicare for all, I think was a question, and she did not raise her hand. So I guess she's not in favor of a single payer, but I was really I liked Elizabeth Warren, and I mean, again, I was fine with her or Bernie. Now, I didn't know if she could beat Trump, but I mean, one would think, I thought what was going to happen was, and especially after Nevada, because again, really up to that point, before we get to what happened after Nevada, up to that point, I remember Iowa happened, and 2020 Iowa caucuses, all of it was building up, and I was expecting a Bernie victory. And I remember, I forgot it was happening. I remember the night I was really tired. I just came home from school, and I turned on CNN, and all of a sudden they're covering it, because it just so happened to be on my TV. And I'm just like, oh, it's the Iowa caucuses. And, of course, I was waiting, and it looked like Bernie was going to win. They were counting it up, and a lot of it was Bernie. And then, of course, I think there was one point where, like, the Biden supporters and the Yang supporters, and I think the Buttigieg Buttigieg actually performed really well in Iowa. But, I mean, they were all, trying to, I think, like, steal some delegates from Bernie and Pete and them, or I guess, I don't know how they do the caucuses, how they do the votes or whatever. I guess you got to get like a certain amount of votes to get some type of percentage. I don't know. I think you got to get like over 15% to, be considered a true candidate at each of the caucuses. And of course, Bernie got a lot of turnout, and then they stole the Iowa caucuses from them. And if you don't know, if you haven't read up, I advise you to go read it up. But just to give you a quick little brief of what happened, they announced the results of the Iowa caucuses. And then when they announced the results were there were none. There were no results, and they couldn't figure out what was going on because there were voter irregularities, even though they were using the same apps and stuff to count the caucus votes, which was helped us designed, I guess, from Clinton staffers from the Clinton campaign. So a little, and they didn't like Bernie. So of course, again, Biden was like a distant, he was fourth or fifth or whatever. Biden looked dead. I thought it was going to be like the 2016 Republican primary. You have the outsider Bernie Sanders coming in, leading the revolution. And of course, the establishment keeps just throwing out candidates thinking, hey, this is going to work, this is going to work. It initially was Jeb Bush. He got pushed out. Biden was Bush. Then, of course, you have Buttigieg and Klobuchar and basically Bloomberg and all of these establishment cronies who, of course, they were, Rubio and Cruz and Christie and all of these guys who they thought were, going to dethrone Trump, and Trump won. And I thought Bernie was going to win the presidency. I really did. Well, Iowa, I remember calling my friends, me and my dad were talking about it. I was saying, I figured out how they're going to steal, because they announced it and they said, look at this. There's still like 35% of the vote out. And of course, on the night, Mayor Pete goes out there and says, I won, in his little snarky voice that he has. And of course, Mayor Pete Buttigieg goes out there and is like, I won. And then of course, they finally released the results. And Bernie had more votes. But they said, I guess, because of the way the caucuses line up, somehow, because I guess you have to get like certain delegate votes of the state or something. I don't know. The state delegates, I'm pretty sure Bernie even won the state delegates. And he also won the popular vote of the state, but somehow they were able to divvy it up to where Mayor Pete got most of the delegates. And of course, then you have Chris Cuomo go out there and they have a town hall with Pete Buttigieg, and they're all chummy. They're like, yeah, Pete, you won. And it's like, oh, thank you, I did win. And of course, it was really, I about vomited because, of course, just how chummy they were. Okay, and but you saw though the media, they were trying to say, oh, well, there was sexual assault in Bernie's campaign that, apparently Bernie didn't know about it. And when you figure, so now he's knowing now that we're knowing, but that has to be blamed on Bernie. And of course, because Bernie's a sexist and misogynist, and they also came out with, the Bernie bros, and they started attacking the base, which I still don't understand how you expect to get the side that lost. I don't know how you're expecting to get their vote when you sit there the entire primary and insult them. I don't understand how you expect to get that, or I guess get their vote. I mean, it made no sense whatsoever. But I mean, again, it was just, that was exactly what the establishment was doing. And they felt, hey, listen, our little coalition of old white normies and boomers are going to go out there and get the win, and we're going to beat Trump. And of course, they were hammering electability. And I thought the electability and the anti-Trump, we have to beat Trump, was going to backfire, because then when Bernie, I thought Bernie was going to win. And then again, because the old normie Democrats would have said, well, listen, we really wanted our guy to win, but the media, you guys are telling us, we need Trump out. And of course, the Bernie base would have been there, and that would have blown Trump out of the waters. Well, of course, New Hampshire happens, and it was narrow. And then, of course, the media, again, if you watch the Bernie blackout, you would know that, it was, oh, look at Pete, he came in second place. What about Klobuchar? Bentham, she went from fourth place to third place. Oh, we gotta give her, we gotta give her props. It's the Bentham. Maybe she might win in Nevada. Oh, look at Mike Bloomberg. People want to vote for Mike Bloomberg. He's gonna be eligible on Super Tuesday, guys. We gotta vote. Bernie's on. Or they wouldn't even mention Bernie. It was one of those things. And of course, Biden was a distant second, but they just completely dismissed him. And of course, Elizabeth Warren had fallen off a cliff at this point, but she was sticking in because she was clinging on to a little bit of hope, even though I think the establishment was like, hey, Liz, you want to keep your job in the Senate. You want to try to be respectable anymore by the media and the Democratic establishment, which I guess she really cared about. It was stay in the race and split up the Bernie vote. And you know what? She did that because then New Hampshire comes. They have another debate in Las Vegas and Nevada. And of course, I think that was the one with, no, it wasn't, I'm pretty sure that was the one with Bloomberg. I think that was the first Bloomberg debate. And of course, Michael Bloomberg goes out there and, of course, calls Bernie a communist. And then the media, but in the debates, they attacked Bernie, they slandered him, they called him a socialist, a communist, a Castro supporter, even though Bernie said, oh, listen, I don't support Fidel Castro and what he did with the human rights violations, but he did have a pretty decent, literacy program that educated, and I would like to, not completely replicate everything Fidel Castro did, but maybe some of the good we can replicate and give it to all of Americans, give it to the entire American people. Well, of course, the media slandered him. He blew it out of the water in Nevada. I really thought he was a front runner, but again, just like the Bernie blackout documentary said, the media was, he's unstoppable. We got to stop the Bernie bros because they're so mean. Even though the logic would say, well, yeah, okay, you may have been called a name on the internet by a retard, okay, but, it's just because an inbred insulted you on the internet does not mean, hey, just because someone said that, I'm a lying dog-faced pony soldier now, I think I'm not going to support universal health care anymore and cancellation of student debt that would greatly benefit me. I'm not going to support any of that anymore. It's just like, that's retarded thinking. That's just stupid. You're being an idiot. And of course, I think most people kind of saw that light, which is why Bernie won in Nevada. Well, then of course, South Carolina comes. Biden wins in a state he was supposed to win. I thought Biden was going to win. I thought it was going to be at least somewhat close. It wasn't. So, he did exceed some of my expectations, but I thought Biden was going to win because they talked about the firewall that he had. But I thought, if he doesn't win, it's over. And at that point, if Bernie would have won South Carolina, he would have been unstoppable, and I would have been celebrating. Well, he didn't win, and I was just like, okay, now you got to win South Carolina. Well, then that Monday, guys, the most disheartening Monday I will ever tell you, okay? And I know I'm getting closer, and I know you're probably trying to figure out why I'm getting closer, but it's just because Mayor Pete, Beto O'Rourke, and Amy Klobuchar, okay, all coalesced around Biden. They dropped out, and again, and apparently Obama was like, you see in the movies, the back room, smoke-filled back rooms, saying, hey, listen, we gotta get this guy out, so we're gonna all team up and take him out, like a super villains. Well, it's kind of what Mayor Pete, Amy Klobuchar, and Beto O'Rourke did in Dallas, Texas. They all got together, and of course, Super Tuesday, I was expecting a win. I thought Bernie was going to win. I thought he was going to win at least like 11 states and run away with it at this point. Well, it didn't happen. And of course, Elizabeth Warren, she has a lot. We get to thank her a lot for that, because guess what? Elizabeth Warren was one of the big reasons why Bernie ended up falling flat on his face on Super Tuesday, because she split up the vote in Massachusetts, a state that Bernie should have won. She stayed in, split up the vote, and then, next week she drops out when she realizes she had no shot because she couldn't even win in her home state. And nothing was more enraging. Same thing in Maine, okay? And again, she really F Bernie. And then, of course, California, they took years to count the votes there because, want to know why? Because they didn't want to award Bernie all the delegates because they wanted to make it look like Biden was just going to run away with it. And it was over. And Biden had the greatest American comeback, or I guess the greatest American political comeback in history. Well, guess what? He goes out there, I don't think they have a debate, and they go out there on the next primary days. And of course, Bernie, again, the endorsements, Bernie wasn't ready for. He should have been ready for. He should have said, listen, the establishment, when you're saying yourself, the establishment is getting nervous, you have to scrape up together some endorsements. Try to get Elizabeth one. And if she doesn't, you have to try to scrape something together. And in those states, he had to get somebody else, but he didn't. And that really screwed him in the long run. And again, I was just extremely excited about, thinking, hey, because I can't vote, okay? But then, of course, it hit. And this was the death note, pretty much, of Bernie's campaign, okay? The beginning of the end right here, because he still had a fighting shot. But this was where it really all just went awry. COVID. When I think it was the World Health Organization declared that COVID was a pandemic, that ended Bernie's campaign right there. And then, of course, Bernie had to cancel a rally due to COVID. That also ended his campaign. Because then it showed that Bernie was not a fighter. And even at that point, Bernie wasn't even hitting Biden as hard as he needed to. He attacked him. They had another debate, and he attacked him over Social Security. And you know what? It wasn't enough. And, again, I remember going to a friend's house. His dad was a big Biden guy. And, of course, he felt, it's electability. We can't, Well, it turns out he was right. He felt, well, listen, Biden is just the most electable. And, of course, we'll get to all of everything that happened here in the general election. But, of course, it became extremely clear Bernie was not willing to fight. And he was willing to cave over something that, COVID. Listen, guys, okay, just... When you ask in November of 2019, if you ask somebody what the coronavirus was, if they even knew what it was, they would say it's a cold. It's pretty much a flu or a cold. Okay, COVID-19 hits, which is a little bit more of a severe case of the cold and or the flu. And people, of course, always point to, well, look at the deaths, guys. By August, I'm pretty sure, they were projecting the death number to be where it's at right now, 260,000 people dead. That's what they were projecting. They said that's the best case scenario. That's what they were projecting the best case scenario will be. And it is November, and we are just now hitting 260K deaths. Okay? Now you can say, well, there's 13 million cases. Here's the thing. Do the numbers, okay? The survival rate is greater if you get it. I had COVID. My family had COVID. Okay? I know... COVID is not that serious. Now, you can get harder. There can be some long-lasting effects. But 9 out of 10 times, you're probably going to survive. You're going to survive COVID. Unless you have an immunodeficiency, okay? Or, you just have a weaker immune system, okay? And even then, though, my stepfather, okay? He has cancer, okay? And he probably had COVID. He never got tested, but again, I had COVID. I was around him. Okay, my brother was around him, my mom was around him. He got sick. Coincidentally, right then and there, he probably had COVID. And if he didn't have COVID, then I don't know what to tell you. But he's still here. And he actively has cancer and is fighting cancer. So I think that just goes to show COVID is not as serious. Now, here's the thing. Could there have been some precautionary measures, maybe in nursing homes or something? Yes. But anyways, again, Bernie quit his campaign pretty much after that because, again, he got blown out, okay, on the third Tuesday they were doing primary votes. Bernie got blown out. I remember it was on Friday on the Nevada debates. The Friday before that, I was at a friend's house, found out I live in West Virginia. That was whenever Governor Justice put out, basically all schools are canceled. And then, of course, again, everything spiraled out of control. Really, so it was just so disheartening. And, of course, you just think about it. My dad was in Las Vegas whenever it all happened, and really Bernie and Biden going out there and talking up COVID like no other is what really started the craze of COVID on the Democratic Party. And then, of course, Bernie had to drop out on April 8th because, for one, he got blown out in Wisconsin, but they pretty much stopped. They said the media started hammering on Bernie, if you keep campaigning, okay, you're gonna kill people, dude. So stop. even though we had the same general election. Anyways, the inconsistencies of the media were shown. You had the idiots on the media like Chris Matthews who were saying that they were scared for their lives and that they were going to be, apparently in the 80s or something about how they were going to get their heads chopped off and Central Park or something because of the communists or something. And, Chuck Todd famously calling an online army of brown shirts. What? About Bernie Bros? What are you talking about, dude? What are you talking about there? Biden, if anything, had that. Okay, Biden had a lot of the old white normie suburban voters, or I guess suburban voters. I mean, that's. But anyways, guys, Bernie had to shut his campaign down. You had the stimulus talks and the stimulus checks, which is still another failure. The biggest probably political failure of all time. And then, of course, Biden won the nomination. You had the disaster that was the RNC and DNCs, and campaigning started, and polling failing again, and everything was closer. And then on election night, mail-ins, and not to get too conspiratorial here. And listen, I don't like Trump. I'm glad he's out. Okay. I've always said to myself, I couldn't vote now, but I would never vote for a Republican. But Biden to me is a Republican. He's a wolf in sheep's clothing. He's a Republican or maybe he's a Democrat in name only, but he's a Republican at heart. He's an old Republican. He's a 60s Republican. He fought for busing segregation. He fought against busing desegregation. Is how I should put it. He wrote one of the most racist crime bills we've ever had. He supports the war on drugs. He voted for the Iraq and Afghanistan war. He voted for the Patriot Act. He was one of the, I guess, the main contributors to the subprime mortgage crisis stimulus bills, which was a massive handout to corporations under Obama. He was one of the key components in it. He's lied constantly. He lied about marching with civil rights. He lied about, I think, marching with Nelson Mandela in Africa, or something like that, or getting arrested with Nelson Mandela. Or something. I can't. It's such a stupid lie. I can't even remember what it fully was, off the top of my head. The guy got sexual assault allegations against him from Tara Reid. Now they don't. I mean, again, I did a video on it. I'm not saying he actually did sexually assault her. Her story, again, is just kind of, I don't know if I necessarily believe her at all, but, I mean, still. The media, not a chirp, not a peep about it until it was too late, and Biden pretty much won the nomination. Yeah, I would never vote for Joe Biden. He said in the debates, he beat the socialists. The biggest F you he could have possibly given to me and the Bernie base and Bernie Sanders himself. I beat the socialists. I'm not for socialized medicine. And yet, you know what? The guy won. And listen, it was really genius. You coalesce around Biden. You shut down Bernie's campaign by hyping up COVID. Because I'm not saying, they created COVID and brought it here. I'm not saying that's too conspiratorial even for me. But, I'm just saying, I think they hyped up COVID from what it really was. Okay? Because, and the reason I say this is because, again, Cuomo, Gavin Newsom, Nancy Pelosi have all broken their own protocols out there. They say they support. They've all broken their own protocols by either not wearing a mask at orgies like Gavin Newsom or, going and getting a haircut when they shouldn't, like the mayors of Chicago and stuff. You have all of them. Listen, I wouldn't blame them, okay, if they completely railed against that, okay? They tell us, I'm not really affected by it because, I'm a kid, so, I'm not necessarily dating, but, they tell people, how to go on dates, basically got everybody scared of their own shadow. And so they had to it took a pandemic with a very weird looking, very sketchy mail-in voting, okay, that is very sketchy. And the Republicans, I mean, listen, I don't agree with Fox. I hate them. I despise them. I hate their politics. But I mean, I kind of agree with them on the standpoint of it is kind of sketchy with the mail-in ballots. I mean, it does look a little bit sketchy. I mean, there was probably some meddling there. Again, I don't know. We're gonna see what these Senate runoffs, okay. Which again, even with this, Biden won and he's already ran to the center. I'm pretty sure he's already going to start nominating Republicans to his cabinet. His cabinet. The people he's putting around him. If he's supposed to be so left-wing, and Bernie's apparently asked to be in his administration, and Biden, I'm pretty sure, has already basically laughed at him pretty much. It's a no. Yeah, obviously. I mean, he's already talking like he's lost. Okay? He's already said, oh, I don't know, if we're going to be able to push what we want through because we're just going to have too much resistance from Mitch McConnell. And I got to try to work with Mitch McConnell and show that I'm willing to work with Mitch McConnell. And that is, it really is just the biggest crock of crap I've ever, I mean, really, I can't stand Joe Biden. I'm really upset that, again, and I fancy torturing myself. So, I go in there and I've been watching, primary nights and stuff. And I mean, really, it was just so disheartening to sit there and see how Bernie had it right there. He had the entire DNC by the balls, okay? And he let go and he walked away and he dropped out and he showed he just really wasn't a fighter. And I'm not saying that he's a part of the establishment, but what I'm saying about Bernie is that I think he wanted to try to get in good with them, thinking he could change them, and they used him, they manipulated them. They stopped any chance of a third party getting pushed through in 2016 and 2020, which would have divided the party and caused them to lose. He stopped any chance of that, and I don't even think he realized it. Now he did allow the squad to come in, which had become the biggest joke in American politics. Because, the squad was something they were supposed to build off of, and it's still a heavily established. Unless they make a new party, then you can maybe build off it. But, they become the biggest. It's a failure, really. Listen, I love AOC. I love Rashida Tlaib. I love Ilhan Omar. I think their politics are great. But they were supposed to bring in the revolution, and they didn't do it. In this election, really, honestly, because the media won. If the progressives do not split from the Democratic Party, they will never, ever be taken seriously again. They're not going to get credit for winning, okay? And if the Democrats would have lost, they would have gotten nothing but blame, okay? But they could have you would have had a divide, but now they have to leave the party. They have to. We have to form our own party. I don't care if you call it the Progressive Party. I don't even care if you call it a socialist party. I don't care what they call it. I don't care if they call it the Washington Redskins party. I don't care, okay? I just care that if they have a base that aligns with me and a party that can align with me, because Biden didn't earn it. My dad told me, well, son, listen, I was begging my dad to not vote Biden, but he said, son, listen, I'm sorry, I can't. We got to get Trump out, and what do you want me to do? Vote Bernie? But write in Bernie, they're throwing out my vote. But you know what? They threw away my vote. The Democrats did throw away my vote. Okay, I'm not throwing away my vote. They threw my vote away. They did not earn it. And so, again, they've got to grow some spine and create a new party that is establishment free so they can build a coalition, because guess what? The coalition dies with every election that the establishment wins. And this is no longer the battle of Democrats versus Republicans. It is now the establishment versus the people. And that is what this election should have been about, class warfare. And instead, COVID came in, they hyped it up, and they were able to talk about nothing. They were able to talk about a disease and a vaccine that we can't even trust because we have all of these big, corporate, pharmaceutical companies coming in there that we don't know if they're going to make a good vaccine. They're just going to make a profit of it. This is, after all, this is exactly what Trump negotiated, okay? And I don't trust a thing Trump would negotiate, okay? The guy's a Republican. The guy, again, massive taxes for the wealthy, okay? The guy still has not given us proper health care. The guy doesn't have any of it, okay? So, I don't trust anything Trump does. And, again, just looking at it now, Nancy Pelosi, She has just reaffirmed her foothold. But again, Biden's already talking like they lost. Okay, when they still have I think, what is it right now? 49-48 in the Senate right now. Republicans have the 1-seat lead. 50, Kamala Harris has a tiebreaker. So Biden should be out there campaigning. But it's hiding Biden again. Where's Biden? Where's Biden? Now that won, but that's not going to win in Georgia. Okay, he's got to go out there and he's got to pull himself together. And he's got to stop. But again, they have a losing mentality. And the only reason they won is because they basically cheated. I mean, they did. They cheated Bernie out and they kind of cheated Trump. And I'm not saying Trump would have won either way, because he became very unpopular, but they used the pandemic to their advantage. They used the fact that people were dying out in the streets. And of course, it's showing that socialism has failed again in Texas. There are bread lines of people waiting for food banks trying to get, oh, wait, that's socialism. That's in Texas. That's a Republican state. That is the epitome of capitalism. And there are bread lines. Ladies and gentlemen, America's system, our capitalistic system, whatever you want, it's failed. And this election should have been about that. And COVID has shown how much it's failed. And they can't get a freaking stimulus bill out. And of course, Nancy Pelosi, who just rejected the stimulus bill, I actually agree with her, because this is what the first one was about. Everyone was, getting so mad at Bernie because he didn't, break up the bill, okay, and, get money out to the people, then not for the corporations. Well, Pelosi's negotiating the bill, showing some spine, and of course CNN had the goal to go out there and basically tell her, oh, gotta get the money out. Gotta get the money out to the people, Pelosi, when they know that that's basically just a Republican pet project. So it would be another big bailout. I think it's like, what, $2 trillion? Well, where's the majority of that money going? Not to the people. It's hush money again, folks. People got to wake up and see this, okay? But again, everybody was so dialed up in COVID and the election that it was not about class warfare. It's not about the fact that income inequality, the gap is growing. It's not about the fact that we still have millions uninsured and people dying without basic health care. And now in the pandemic, okay, that, they rail against that. Now, nobody's really recommended universal health care. There's not been a serious discussion about it in Congress. I haven't seen one, okay? Student loan debt is still raging on, okay, trillions of dollars owed, okay, we're still out in the wars. Trump said he's going to pull out, but it's probably just going to end up being a reshuffling of the troops out there, okay, because that's what it is, because he doesn't want to move out. He knows he has buddies, I'm sure, in the military-industrial complex. This is the America that I'm growing up in and that I'm living in, and automation has come in the pandemic now because everybody's going to be too scared to go out and work. Now, guess what? They're going to be able to usher in the machine era, and labor is now going to be run by the machines. And this is the America we've allowed this country to get to this point. The third world country, the United States of America, okay, is failing right beneath our eyes. And we're turning into an oligarchy as the day continues to pass. And you know what? I'm 15. You can say I'm getting a little bit too political here. But I just think it's something that it's got to be acknowledged. And again, the only way I see any type of change happening is if the Democrats, the Democratic Party splits up and becomes into two. The Democratic Party and the Progressive Party. That's all I got, guys. I know the video kind of went on longer than usual, but I mean, it's just, sure, as you can tell from my voice, it's been a very disheartening just time period for me, seeing the election results.